Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be addressing a subscriber request. My subscriber Danielle, hi Danielle, specifically wanted to know how she could incorporate color into gray and silver tones. So I'm going to be doing that today, probably 2 looks, and I'm also going to be talking about some palettes that are on the market that have curated color stories involving gray and silver. If you're interested in seeing that, don't go anywhere. I had put up in my community tab asking if you guys liked a video I did where I was pairing 2 more unusual colors. In that case, it was mint and yellow. And I asked if you had any particular color suggestions that you wanted me to talk about. So Danielle was the only one who answered me. Therefore, this video is mainly geared towards her, but I hope you all enjoy it anyway. Today, I'm going to be using these 2 palettes. This is from Sydney Grace. It's called Quintessence, and it is when they collaborated with Temptalia. They made 3 palettes together. And then here's the Surge palette from Blend Bunny Cosmetics. Before we start, I do want to mention, I looked through my collection and I pulled out the Blueberry Muffin palette from BH Cosmetics. This is an example of where they paired gray and silver with a color. In this case, they used blue. This brown up here actually has a little bit of purple in it as well. This is the palette I used today for my face, actually. I used this one here, which I'd forgotten about the purple, and this one here to get a little bit of a contour. Anyway, this palette is a good example of gray and silver with color. Aside from this, I don't think I have any others in my collection, but again, gonna give you some suggestions. So if you hear weird noises in the background, my baby is right here. She's playing in an extra saucer and she's learning how to jump, but she's happy, so we're gonna roll with it. I'm gonna prime my eyes using the Glam Light Icing Primer. Everything I'm using is linked below in the description box. If you happen to have different colors of eyeshadow primer, I would recommend using a cool toned one for cool toned colors, obviously. I have the shade White Frosting, and I also have Buttercream. Buttercream is more neutral, my skin tone, so I'm using White Frosting. Let me read you the comment exchange that went behind today's video. Danielle had asked for spicy neutrals, which I did do, and that is a separate video which I can card above for you. She said anything with gray and silver. That's my fave color and never know what looks good with it, so I always pair it with taupe and gunmetals. I responded, ooh, silver and pink, silver and blue, silver and lavender. Use a gray matte base, deepen with black, and throw on some silver and colored shimmers. Girl, it's a win all day. She wrote back, gah! Black shadow terrifies me unless lining with it. Same as darker blues, they just scare me. I feel like I look like Mimi Bobek from the Drew Carey show. And then we talk more about spicy neutrals. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure if I want to do 2 like matching looks as far as deep outer corner, light inner, or if I want to do different styles, like a halo eye maybe. Let's just start with one and then I will go from there. I'm taking the Quintessence palette in a medium, pretty fluffy blending brush, and I'm gonna grab the shade Reaching Zenith, which is a gray matte. It's a light gray, it's not very dark. And what I'm gonna do is I think I'm gonna put this in my outer half, and I'm thinking I'm gonna bring in some color in a matte at the inner half of the crease, you know? All right, so that's a beautiful soft gray matte in the outer corner. Now, you could do this so many different directions. Of course, you could fill the whole crease with that gray, and there are so many different things you could do, but I'm just starting foundationally with a gray matte. Now I'm gonna deepen it with a black, as I suggested. This is a Blend Bunny B1 brush, so it's a little bit smaller, still pretty loose, but just a bit smaller and more precise, and I'm taking a black. This is the shade Umbra from the Quintessence palette, but you could do this with anything. I understand that black can be a really scary color, but just remember to go in really lightly and start with essentially a gray. And you can always build it up. If you have a good black, it's just gonna build and build. It won't get patchy on you. At this stage of the game, there are so many brands out there that have great quality shadows. You should be able to get an affordable palette that has a good black. Don't dive into the palette, don't load up your brush, just tap it very, very lightly. Lay it down where you want it to be and then blend it out. And if you find that it's not dark enough or not dramatic enough for you, then just tap in a little bit more, bring in a bit more. It's so much easier to build up a color than it is to take it away. I noticed that I had a little bit of naked skin essentially where my fold is, so I'm changing my angle and making sure that I cover all the skin in that area, and I am dipping back into umber because I want it to be darker, making sure all that space is covered. And I like to angle my shadows a little bit, so I'm bringing the darker shadow a little bit closer to my lashes over here and then coming out this direction. Let's go over into the Surge palette quickly. This palette has a bunch of colorful pastels up top, so I think I'm going to start in one of those, and again, I can bring in more depth of color if I want to. There is one very important thing to remember here when you start bringing color into a gray look. Remember that you want cool tones. It's not the end of the world if you go for warm tones, but it's going to clash a little bit more. I like to combine cool and warm tones, particularly if I'm doing a monochromatic look. I think it brings in more interest. But if you're using a gray as your foundation, you're probably going to want to stay more towards the cool tone side of things. So within this palette, these pastels are all a little bit cooler. Even the green, which has a smidge of yellow in it. It depends. You have to just play around, really. But a pastel of any color is probably going to be fine because it's light toned enough to work with the gray base. I'm going to take, I don't know, I have no idea. I think I'm going to avoid the blue because it's pretty close to the gray anyway. When you see a gray-based palette, usually is paired with blue or purple. And also because it's going to be too matchy-matchy with my shirt. So I think I'll take pink. I'm going to take the same Blend Bunny brush. The shadow here is called Beckon. Actually, yeah, that's fine. We'll start with Beckon. I'm going to put this in the center of my crease, but I think I'll bring the other pink even further down. So I'll put Beckon here. Beckon is actually more of a lilac color. It's got some purple in it. Very pretty. Wiping off that brush and going into light pink next to it, which is called Cheeks. And Cheeks I will place all the way down to my inner corner. Look at how pretty this color looks with the cool, soft gray tones. These are blending together so beautifully, but I think we'll bring in some shimmer. You can see in the Quintessence palette, of course, that there are other colorful shimmers in here. All the mattes in here are actually gray-based. Parallax has a hint of purple, depending on your skin undertones, and then black. The rest of the colors in this palette are shimmers, and so I think I'm gonna take
2,000 years later.
Shimmers. So what I'm gonna take is this shade here in Serge. It's called Maybe. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no plan. I'm just playing. So I'm putting Maybe over here. I'm basically just blending it into the outer mattes. When that's laid down pretty well, going back into that lavender matte and reinforcing it up here. Maybe would have been a better color match for the pink, but I don't want the depth over here. So I don't know. I'm just messing about. Inside Quintessence, I'm taking the shade called the Milky Way, and I'm going to lay this down on my lid space, most of the lid space. And again, Danielle, if you just wanted to do a gray matte and deepen with black and then add any colored shimmer, as long as it's a little bit more on the cooler side of things, it's gonna look beautiful. I'm just using a bunch of different shadows to give you some ideas and options, but you'd be safe with a gray matte, a black matte, and a colored shimmer, and it would be so, so pretty. Now with my finger as well, I'm taking Orion Nebula, which is much closer to that pink shadow that I just laid down next to the gray mattes, and here is why. It's going to help bridge the gap between the lighter shimmer and the mattes out here. Just add in that shade in a different formula. On my lower lash line, I'm going to bring this pink matte into the lavender matte, into the gray matte. And then I'm just deepening this outer corner with the black again. Okay, so that's the first look. I haven't done waterline or mascara or anything. I'm just going to quickly move into the second look. Again, the baby's currently happy, so we're rolling with it. I'm taking the same brush that I used to start off the first look, and I'm going back into the first shadow, which is that mid-tone gray matte. And I'm going to wipe this through, I think, my whole crease. I don't know. I'm taking that Blend Bunny B1 and grabbing the shade Lush from the Serge palette. I will put that in my outer corner, I think. And why don't we turn this into a halo eye? So I'll also put it on my inner corner. Now, if I had placed this green down without a gray base, it would be looking more green. So I'm taking a smaller and more pinched blending brush. I'm going to grab both the shades Alive and Hint, just a little of each, maybe a little bit heavier on the Hint, and just kiss the edges of the shadow here so that I can bring in a distinct green color scheme. Okay, this is where we are now. I also carried the Alive shade all the way on my lower lash line to the inner corner. It's a new halo eye technique I'm playing with. I'm trying not to do a lot of steps because I don't want this video to take forever, but this is where we are now, and I think it's time to bring in some shimmer. So let's grab the shade Limitless from the Serge palette because it's a beautiful green, and I'm going to pop this right in the middle. Now, this is not bringing in much contrast, obviously, but it's going to give me a nice, pretty, sparkly base, and I can build upon that with a lighter tone. You see how the undertones of these greens have all pretty much worked with the gray. You might not know that I laid gray down, but I did because you saw me do it. Because the gray was so hidden and this video is about using silver and grays with colors, I'm going to put some silver on top of here. So back into the Quintessence palette, and I'm taking Serious Starlight, looks like this, and I'm going to dab that right on top of the halo eye, right in the center. Aha, look at that, transformed. My inner corner has been a bit drowned out, so I'm taking the Umber shade, which is the black from Quintessence, and just deepening this a little bit again so that it is clearly a halo eye. I think I'll do the outer corner as well because it's kind of looking khaki instead of black. So you can use a silver shimmer as a topper shade on top of a color that you've laid down. You're going to have the undertones of that color, but with a silver shine. Okay, here are the looks all done. I put white in both waterlines, added some mascara, and that's it. I'm going to show you guys some close-ups of the looks while I talk about some palettes that you could consider getting if you're interested in more gray, silvery sorts of palettes. Obviously, I already showed you the Blueberry Muffin palette from BH Cosmetics. I couldn't find many other palettes in my collection that have a lot of grays, but there are some on the market for sure that have gray undertones or gray-leaning colors. For example, Nomad Cosmetics makes two palettes that sprung to mind immediately. The Fête de Provence palette is beautiful gray-toned purples, and there are some yellows in there, which are a lovely pairing, as well as some pinks. It's a really, really pretty palette. And then another one that Nomad makes is the Hudson Valley palette. Danielle, I think you might have this one, I don't recall. But the Hudson Valley palette actually has a lot of gray undertone colors. Some of the neutrals in that palette have a gray base that are leaning on the cooler side. You could easily pair those with gray and black in the crease and outer corner. And then Fantasy Cosmetica just released a new palette. I think it's called the Fighter. And that one came to mind as well because there are several colors in there which are gray undertone. This is off the top of my head, but I definitely remember that color story being pretty unique as far as having a lot of grays and then the colors that they chose to pair with them. Of course, there are other palettes on the market if you're looking for something that has a lot of gray and silver, but you're not sure about what colors to use with it. You might be able to find palettes that are pre-curated for you if that's what you're interested in. If you have a large enough collection, my tips would be to stay in the cool tones, especially if you're not feeling very adventurous or sure of yourself. Just stick with cool tones. Cool tones will always work with gray and silver. I also recommend that you try pastels because you don't even have to go for a cool tone pastel. It's going to be naturally a little cooler because of its undertones of white. So try cool tones, try pastels. Those are my two biggest tips. Thank you, Danielle, for giving me this video suggestion. I hope that this video was helpful, maybe a little inspiring. You might want to recreate one of these looks if you're feeling a bit stuck, and that can open up the door to new ideas for you. I think your collection is probably big enough that you can shop your stash and get exactly what you're looking for. So do let me know in the comments which look you like best. Thank you so much for being here today. Everyone who's watched this video, I appreciate you and your time. I hope that you'll consider subscribing before you go if you like this content and you want to see more of it. I do try to upload several videos a week, and I'll see you again in my next one. Bye!